Welcome back everybody to another watercolor tutorial. We're painting a beautiful winter evergreen landscape today. So start off with your watercolor piece of paper in landscape position, and then grab your paintbrush, and we're just going to be applying a wash to about half to a third at the top. And you can use, let's start with blue. A blue wash because it is supposed to be the sky, but we are going to amend it a little bit with green in a moment. Any blue will do. You just want to add enough water that it's transparent and it's not going to overtake the rest of our painting. So start out about 2/3 up your piece of paper, and then we're gonna swoop downwards. So we're gonna kind of paint it like that. You wanna make your swoop a little more gradual than I did. I think that's okay. And now I am just wetting my brush in some water, and I'm spreading that initial blue upwards to sort of create this light blue gradient. Take your time and make sure that you've covered everything. I'm just going to pick up some of the blue on the left side here. It's a little bit more intense than the rest of the painting. And I'm going to add, this is where you might want to work a little bit quickly. I'm going to grab some green. Again, any green will do. Add a bunch of water. I'm going to tilt my piece of paper downwards a little bit, like so. And then begin applying some green to the edge of the blue that I just painted. And we want to encourage that green to flow downwards. So if it's not flowing downwards, you either don't have enough water or you're not tilting your paper enough. I'm going to mix in some brown as well over on this side. So see how that spread out? So I think I am okay with that. It'll do for now. Yeah, so we're gonna let this completely dry before we move on to the next step. Actually, while this is drying, I'm just gonna quickly add something to the bottom of my piece of paper. I want to make it look really frosty and icy since this is a winter landscape. So I've just taken the same blue that I used for the top. It doesn't have to be the same blue, but this one looks icy. And I've just applied it to the bottom, and then I'm dipping my paintbrush in water and again trying to gradient it out until it almost fades with the color of the paper. I am going to extend it on the left side here and kind of have it come towards the center a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. And this is because we're going to be painting these little outcrops, I guess, of trees. So now let's let this totally dry and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so now that that has dried, I'm going to take my paintbrush and I'm going to paint some evergreens just kind of in the shadow of those green accents that we painted earlier. I'm going to actually paint some of them a little bit bluish as well. And we want them to be quite faded, so feel free to water it down quite a bit. And the reason that they're faded is because they're supposed to be in the background, right? So we want them to look like they're very far away. It's perhaps a bit too much water there. I'm going to switch brushes to a finer brush because the one I'm using is just a tad bit too large for the details that I'm hoping to achieve. If you haven't figured out your pine tree painting technique, please feel free to go into my videos and check out my pine tree painting technique video. I mean, I have so many videos that kind of go over painting pine trees, so I don't spend time on explaining them within paintings anymore because the resources are there for you to learn. So this is just how to apply those skills in a landscape painting. So yeah, just feel free to have so many different colors of pines in this background portion. We want to make it look colorful. So I am going to make one like a bluish color over here. Okay, I don't want to overdo it with the pine trees, so I think I'm just going to stop there and then move on to the next part. So now we're going to be painting these very dramatic pine trees that are more in the foreground. So I'm going to have a layer here and a layer here as well. So I'll start with this one because this upper section is a little bit more dry than all the pine trees I painted over here. So these pine trees, we want to make them very, very, very intense. So I'm going to use my green and I'm going to mix a bit of black in there. And then just get right to it. So this blue line that we painted earlier, this icy thing, that's gonna be the base of our trees there. So again, the type of pine trees that or the techniques that you use to paint your pine trees, totally up to you. This is actually, I'm using a method that I don't think I've actually tried before. I wouldn't even call it a method. It's just like where you paint your the bristles of your pine tree. And I do want to make my branches a little bit bushier than they are. Oh, that looks like a very nice little tree. I like it. So I'm going to have another one beside it. And I'm going to just do the same thing that I did before, where I just paint these long lines and then go in after and make them bushier. Add the under bristles. That's what you want to call them. And one more. So I'm just going to finish these guys off by painting a line just underneath them that follows the original blue line that we painted. Now I want to try something here, and there's a chance that this is really going to screw this up. But I'm just taking a little bit, size 8 here. I dipped it in water. And I'm gonna go over the trees here, just dabbing a little bit of water on top, because what I want to do is spread out that pigment, just not spread it out, but kind of let it very, very lightly bleed out and create almost a misty effect around the tree while maintaining its detail. Like, I don't want it to blend out like I would if I was painting mist. So I think that's all right. I think I overdid it on this side, but that's okay. So now we're gonna do something similar that we did here. We're gonna do it here with massive trees. So I'm not going to do all of them with this tiny brush because that would take a very long time. Or maybe I might. We'll see. We'll see what they look like. So I'm gonna have one like this that starts out like that. I very much like this technique. This is something that I would call a technique because I'm consistently doing the same thing and it's consistently turning out all right. I know I've mentioned in many videos before that I should do an updated pine tree painting technique video because there's so many random techniques that I use. And this is one of them. So I have two solid ones that I would share. One I call the blotchy technique or the blob technique, something like that. But I like that one. That's another really good one. It's very easy. It's consistent because that's the thing. Like with the blob technique, which you guys, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about if you haven't watched the video in which I used the blob technique, but in that one, it's really hard to consistently achieve the exact same results. But if you have a technique, like if you have a method of painting the trees that consistently gives you the like same looking trees, then that's when I would call it a technique. That's when it's worth sharing. So this one, you use one of the techniques that I described in the technique video, in the 4 techniques to paint pine trees. That's what it's called. But you're adding these little hairs that come off of each branch afterwards. So I think here I'm kind of using the zigzag staircase method. I think that's what I called it in that video, in that one video. And then adding little hairs. So I definitely could have switched to a larger brush here, but this will do. I'm going to add some lighter trees behind these ones. Not necessarily lighter, I'm just using a lighter color of green, but you can achieve the same thing just by watering yours down a little bit more. I just want to maintain the same level of opacity. So what I want to do before those lighter trees dry is I'm going over them, especially like through the existing trees I already painted, and I want to fill up those white areas in between the first trees that I painted, but I want to still leave that contrast there. And I'm sort of doing the same thing that I did with those other trees, where I want to create a misty effect without making the tree details disappear. I want to maintain the details of the trees. Like so. And now I'm just going over the base of the trees here. Because I want to create a consistent line or a consistent bottom. And I'm extending it with a bit of green. Okay, so that's looking okay so far. And the last thing we want to do that's really going to make this come together is add some details up top here that are coming from beyond the painting. Sorry, I'm just adding some lines to the bottom here because I wasn't exactly happy with how that looked. But that's a little bit better. Okay. Nope, not yet. So we're gonna add pine needles that are coming from, you know, the sky. Obviously they're not coming from the sky. you just want to pretend that there's a tree like right in front of you in the foreground, and or it's like right beside you or even behind you, and the pine needles are just draping over top of you, so you can just see the top of them. And I released not too long ago a tutorial. It's called 4 Techniques How to Paint Pine Branches, and I go over how to paint this particular pine branch. This is a white pine, so I really recommend that you go and check that one out, because you don't even have to do pine branches necessarily. You can do spruce, there's juniper, cedar, so many that you can choose from. But if you do want to use this one, no problem. It's a very easy technique. You just pick a central point and you flick these really long lines that are supposed to be your pine needles down from that central point. And you want to keep them as straight and as thin as possible. And if they overlap, that's even better. You can make them different shades, different intensities, add black to make, you know, certain ones stand out a little bit more. Just like that. You can even have some coming from the bottom. I might have one coming from the right side here, just because it's a little bit blank. Whoops, that one was a little too much. If you want, if those pine branches aren't enough for you, you can even add some pine cones to the mix. And they're like, the abstract ones are really easy to paint. You just start with, I'll go a little bit closer up here. This is going to be the point of my pine cone, and then you add these little, I don't know, half U shapes, and you progressively get wider as you go down the pine cone. And then you have your pine cone. It's that easy. So I'm gonna add another one. Maybe over here. And the key thing is to leave these tiny little U-shape white gaps, because then it resembles the details of a pine cone. I'm going to make that one a little bit bigger. Oops, I don't know if you saw that. That might have not been on camera fully. Typical. I am going to paint one more. I like that they're varying sizes. Where should I paint the last one? I feel like if it was coming from here, it would be way too symmetrical. So I'm going to have another one coming from here, I believe. This might be one of those times when I'm overdoing it with the details, and then it just ruins the delicate painting, but so I don't know how many times I've said one more thing. But this next step is what's going to really complete the entire thing. So you need to grab some opaque white, whether that is gouache, acrylic paint. You can even use whiteout, as I've said many times, because we're going to be adding the snow. So you can so on my pine cones, I am almost doing the same thing that I did when I was painting the pine cone, where I'm painting these U shapes, but you want to make them much more sporadic. Otherwise, you'll just cover up all of the details of your pine cone. And you can also follow some of your pine needles to make it look like they've got some snow on them. And this is a great way to cover up any imperfections or mistakes, like if you painted some of them way too thick. This is certainly a way that you can fix it. And you definitely don't have to do all the pine needles, because that would, one, be very time consuming, but also a little bit unrealistic. This part does not like me. And of course we can't forget our pine trees, our beautiful evergreens. So you can follow the branches here for the snow, and you don't have to do all of them, of course. Okay, so the last thing that we can do with our acrylic paint is flick on some snow, but actually before I do that, I'm going to do my best here to pick up some of this white acrylic paint without ruining it, because I put on way too much. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna keep going, because if I do, I'm gonna smudge everything, and then I keep going. I say I'm not gonna keep going, and then I keep going. Actually, that white residue that it leaves is quite nice because it's much more subtle. So I am gonna keep this up. Okay, so now we're gonna take some white acrylic paint and create snow. So I've added a little bit of water to my white acrylic paint. Then I'm going to take a brush and just tap it like this against the brush with the acrylic paint, and this is going to flick some white acrylic paint onto the painting, and it's going to make it look like it is snowing. And as soon as you see that it's not snowing anymore off of your paintbrush, you can just pick up some more. Just make sure that you keep adding just the tiniest bit of water so that it actually comes off your brush. And if you find that you are either impatient with that technique or you just, like, there isn't enough coming off, you can definitely do it manually with your brush by just dabbing snow on. And there we have it, our little snowy landscape. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit like on this video, and I will see you in the next one.